What's up, guys? Not Satan here. I think in my previous videos I talked about reading, grammar, SRS for beginners, and so today I'm going to talk about immersion. So when I mean immersion, I'm talking about video content, or pure audio content, that sort of thing. So it's separate from reading in that sense. And so when you're a beginner, immersion is insanely difficult because you know nothing and everything that comes into your ears is garbage. It's alien language, right? Mumbo jumbo. So how can you learn to immerse? And so I think it's all about fishing. My philosophy for immersion is called, the philosophy of fishing, or in Korean, how would you say, 낚시의 전리, 낚시의 철학입니다. So when you fish, saltwater fishing or something like that, you go out on a boat and you sit in the middle of the ocean, and with your fishing rod you just sit there and wait. You maybe crack a cold one or something, and you just wait for a fish to bite the bait, and then you catch a fish. I remember when I first caught a fish, I was my first fish ever in my life. I was overjoyed, and so even if you've never fished before, you can probably relate to the experience that you've spent an entire hour waiting, and you finally caught a fish. You'd be happy that you caught a fish, and you wouldn't be unhappy at all the fish you didn't catch, right? So if you think about it, the ocean is ginormous, right? There's probably, trillions of fish. And if you think about the percentage-wise, if you catch one fish out of the trillions of fish, it's like 0.00001%, right? But you wouldn't be unhappy, even if you only caught one. Right? You'd be even more happy if you caught two. So I think the same principle applies for immersion when you're a beginner. Instead of focusing on all the things that you didn't catch, focus on what you can catch. Maybe you were able to pick out one line, or maybe one piece of vocab, or maybe it's just simple things as you're finally able to parse the beginning and the ends of sentences. And with this mentality, I think, of course, in the beginning it's difficult, but once you can keep this mentality in mind, that you're fishing for stuff, you're not trying to catch everything, you're just fishing for one or two things. Eventually you'll find that with this mentality, maybe in your first month you can only catch one key piece of information per video, but maybe the second month you can catch three, and then it grows exponentially, right? And so that's the main advice for beginners. But obviously there's more practical advice. So the first advice I give for beginners is no English subtitles. Just whatever you do, don't watch with English subtitles, because there's no point. First of all, there's no point, and immersion in native material is a skill. Watching stuff with English subtitles is a completely different animal from watching native content, even with native subtitles, right? So if you want to get better at doing the thing, which is immersion, then it makes sense to do the thing that you want to do, which is immersion, right? So the more you do, the better you get at it, right? And so the next step is to find very, very visual content, right? So there's a lot of different kinds of content to immerse in, but then some of them are more talk-oriented. So maybe it's just talking head videos or two people having a dialogue. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have very action-oriented content. So this is one thing which I think makes Korean immersion learning very, very fun and entertaining, is the amount of variety programs they have, right? Or they call it 예능 program. So they have stuff like X-Men, Running Man, Infinite Challenge, that sort of stuff. Very visual content. So there's a lot of stuff that people are doing that you can kind of get a sense of what they're doing based on what you're watching, right? And so this way, even if you might not understand most of the dialogue, at least you'll be having fun in seeing the action that goes on screen. And because you're having fun, in a sense it's more comprehensible, and because it's more comprehensible, it's comprehensible input, and thus you're actually learning things, right? And that's more important. And then you have to find things that you're interested in, for obviously the practical reason that things that you're interested in, you'll probably have more knowledge, more context about what might be happening. So if you're a League player, it makes sense to watch videos about League, because you already know enough about it. There'll be enough information for you to pick up things, right? But then let's say maybe you like cooking, right? Maybe you love cooking, but then you search for videos about running. The carryover is probably going to be very minimal, and so you'll be struggling. So if you like cooking and you search videos that you're interested in, so about cooking, what's the guy's name? Baek Jong-won, that guy. He's probably like the dude, right? So if you watch a lot of his vids, his videos are going to be a lot more comprehensible content, right? And so by finding stuff that you're interested in, you're going to be able to make, once again, comprehensible content, which is comprehensible input, which means you're learning the language, right? That's my little crash and boner came out. And so the last tip, which I think is the most important one, is patience. I think this is a big problem, especially for the Korean language learning community, because most of the non-immersion learners, they're really focused on very, very short-term progress. And so that's why you can see all the videos. It's just like, I learned Korean in 7 days, I learned Korean in 3 days, this sort of stuff, or I learned Korean in a month, right? No one wants to talk about, I learned Korean in 10 years. No one talks about, I learned it in 5 years, right? So the ecosystem is based upon this sort of fast-paced content, and so it seems that everyone's ahead of you, right? Or it seems that you can accomplish things in like a week, right? But then the reality is, it takes a lot longer than that. So patience. Like, you have to be extremely patient. So instead of looking at things in terms of 1 month or 2 month time periods, you want to extend your outlook to look at the big picture, right? So by big picture, I mean you're looking at the yearly progress, which I think makes more sense, because once you put things into perspective, you realize that you will get it eventually, right? So, but if you only look at very, very short-term, minute time intervals, it seems that basically the amount of progress is negligible, right? But if you look in terms of the big picture, if you look at your progress month to month, year to year, you'll see that the amount of progress you're making is actually a lot more than you expected. And so as long as you wait, eventually you'll reach the point where you can start to really understand stuff. All right. Sorry for the little rambly bit, but I think, you know what, it's important that I make the videos. I'm gonna make a proper video about this too, but I think the reason why I'm making a lot of videos now is that the immersion learning community for Korean is still pretty young, right? So for Japanese, I think there's a few established figures, right? But then there's no such thing for Korean. And so right now it's kind of like the wild west for Korean immersion learning. So I'm hoping that I can contribute a little bit into Korean immersion learning history. And so thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and as always, keep immersing.